Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Tim.
Hello.
That was a very muted hello, Tim. You're not feeling, I don't know, lively, energetic, excited to discuss the movie at hand?
I feel a little itchy, a little tasty.
Little tasty, yeah. This is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we talk about a movie that we saw, and of course we, for the first time, really, well, it's not the first new release because Halloween Kills technically was, but that was available at home. This is the first time that we have went to see a movie in the theatre and came to talk about it since, I think, Bram's the Boy 2 in February of 2020.
Hey, I was trying to get you to go see Venom Let There Be Carnage, but no, you wanted to wait out for a real winner.
I mean, it wasn't really a winner. I was like, it was just anything at least slightly better than Venom 2. So we'll see if we accomplish that as we talk about the film. There's a lot of like passion get into this one. Obviously, we'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you warning before we get to the spoilers. Obviously, if you're completely unfamiliar with this franchise, Resident Evil is a video game series which has had many sequels. It is my favorite video game series. It's what made me love video games, especially the early games, the classic style before it changed. But I like some of the new ones too. I dislike some of the new ones as well, but it's evolved over the years. Tim, you're also a big fan of the video game series.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I think we've talked about this before in other episodes, but I mean, I still have vivid memories of playing that first Resident Evil game on my PlayStation, and just really I mean I think I kind of said this before, but I remember like my brother was talking about it, and he was saying, oh, it's like a horror movie but a video game, and I was just like, whatever, like 10 years old or something at the time, and I was just like so confused by the concept. I was like, how is that even possible? Like how like a horror movie but a video game? I don't. And then like playing Resident Evil, it was like mind-blowing. Like, holy shit, like I can't believe like they can do this. And obviously going back now, those first games are like a little cheesy and stuff, but I think they still are a ton of fun, and I do kind of like that there is some cheesiness to the franchise. But I mean, like you said, I played every main game in the series, and some of the one-offs, but I haven't played everything. I haven't played like the light gun games and that kind of stuff. But
no one's counting those, Tim. No one's counting those. And one day we'll finish 6, and we'll have officially beaten all the main entries.
That's true.
Because 6 is terrible, but so not only big fans of the games, right? We are well versed. We are kind of the target audience that is going to get Easter eggs and references and things like that. This is one of the few times where I've went to a movie and like every little thing it did to nod towards the source material, I think I got them all. Like maybe there's like some really obscure ones that I didn't get, but I feel like I got them all. And then the other thing that's important here,
you just like turn to like the old lady sitting next to you and be like, oh yeah, you see, because in the video games.
But the other thing we have to also point out here, and this is important for context, is that as a fan base, the Resident Evil fan base, this is not the first dance we've had with a movie based on the series. In fact, we had a decade and a half saga of 6 films whose entire purpose seemed to be F you to everyone who cares about Resident Evil. Right? That was what it felt like. And I didn't see all of them when they first came out, because I hated the ones that I did see, but I eventually watched them on stream, and I know that one day we're going to have to do them, right? I know it's going to happen, right? One day we're going to have to go through those 6 dreadful films and talk about them.
Dear Lord.
So there was a lot of weird things going into this, right? I did not have super high expectations. I thought the trailer, whilst it had a lot of fan service moments in it, I didn't necessarily think it looked like a great movie per se. I was very mixed on it. But the one thing it did have going for it is that all the set photos showed off like locations that made effort to have them look like the video game, and obviously the cast are all characters from the games, but there was also that weird other thing of like we're smashing the first and the second game into one story, which was a concern, and we'll talk about that obviously. there was a lot going into this. There was a lot of baggage going into this. And I wouldn't say I was excited at all. I wouldn't say that I was dreading it either. I would say that I went in completely like not sure how to feel. Like just I wouldn't even say apathetic. It's not that I didn't care. I just didn't know how to feel about it. So I sat down.
Did you ask the guy that took your ticket? Do you say, how should I feel?
No, I did not. I did not take him for a big fan of Resident Evil. Just it was a hunch, hunch on my part. Although just before we actually get into the movie proper, so there's a bunch of trailers. Some of them are Matrix and all that stuff. But
well, just kind of jump on that real quick. So this was my, I would say, second time like going to the movies in like 2 years. Technically it's the third movie I've seen, because there was like one day where I did like a double feature, but one of them was like a festival screening thing, so it wasn't like a proper big movie theater experience. So Jesus, just going back to the movies though, I forgot how many goddamn trailers they put in front of this thing. Like I was generally getting pissed at the the amount of time.
old man Tim here. Honestly,
it's like I like trailers, but like when you get into like the 15-20 minute mark, because then you also have like the dumb commercials, and you have Nicole Kidman coming on the screen telling you like it's great to be back at the movies. Like I was getting furious.
You ignorant American slut. Right, let me tell you. Right, let me tell you that since I was a kid in the UK, it's always been 20 minutes of ads and then 10 minutes of trailers. It's always half an hour. The time it says on your ticket and the show time is 30 minutes before the movie starts, without fail, and it's been that way for 25 years.
I mean, I'm not saying that it wasn't like that for us, but I mean, it's just been so long since I've been to the theaters that I forgot.
Because we only ever get 4 or 5 trailers, like, and it's usually 4. Like you can almost like time it, like just as you're watching, like, okay, that was the 4th one. It's time for that. They always put one last ad that they obviously charge more for from the companies to put like right before the movie, and then it's movie time. Like, they always do that. But anyway, the point I was getting at before that wild the tangent into the movie going experience and old man Tim yelling at the clouds is. There was a trailer for a movie I didn't know about, and partly because I've not been paying attention to trailers, and it was this awful looking horror movie about a woman like being accepted into like the Exorcist training or something, called The Devil's Light, I think it was. And as I was watching it, I was like, oh, this looks terrible, and I had this sinking feeling like, oh no, like, movies are back in theaters and Screams After Midnight's back. I'm going to have to see this. I had this sinking feeling. I'm like, no, I'm going to have to come and watch this. And I had this just feeling of dread inside me.
That's funny. I don't think I got that one. I don't think I've heard of it. I'll have to check it out.
I think it was The Devil. It was something like that. Like I said, I'd never heard of it before, so, and it's not like it left a great impression. But Colin Salmon was in it, I think, who funnily enough was in the first Resident Evil movie, the original one back in 2002. So weird connection there, just to wrap it all back into context.
Oh yeah.
So yes. So basic premise of Resident Evil 1, and this is the video game I'm talking about here, just to sort of put in perspective what's from 1 and what's from 2, without spoilers.
Give us a director's cut.
1 is a team called STARS from the police department are sent to the Arklay Mountains, and they end up in a mansion, the Spencer Estate, which is filled with zombies and other nasty things, and they eventually find like a lab that's responsible for everything, and blah blah blah, right? So it's the STARS team in the mansion. It's Jill and Chris as the main characters, Wesker as well, and Barry Burton, who, need I mention, Richard made this movie. Richard's in this thing. Brad Vickers is in this movie, but Barry Burton, the best character in the entire Resident Evil franchise, did not make the cut, you bastards.
It's extremely weird that there is so much fan service in this movie, and yet no Barry, no Rebecca.
There are too many characters. This is the problem with having 1 and 2 together, is that you've got all these characters from 2 as well. So
no, it's. I mean, yeah, we were concerned with the trailer, and I don't want to spoil too much about my thoughts, but yeah, I still think that's not a good idea.
So that's the first game. The second game is that Chris from the first game, his sister Claire comes looking for him about a month or two later, and runs into a rookie cop named Leon Kennedy, and they end up trapped in the police station, which is filled with zombies and other nasty things. And that's also where William Birkin and that plot line comes from. That's like the plot of Resident Evil 2. So this movie smashes those things together. It has them all happen on one night. So we'll talk about that choice later. Yeah.
And also there's well, I guess maybe a little bit of sprinkling of the the first game remake, some stuff from there.
Oh yeah, when I said one, I was kind of including the remake, and
okay.
But you're right. Yeah, there's something specifically from the remake that's in here as well. Which, again, we'll talk about how that's implemented. There's a lot of talk about how they've implemented things from the games. I think that's going to come up.
Yeah.
So this one maybe more than other reviewers is going to be a little leaning towards the perspective of people who know the games. Although we'll try and give our objective sort of movie critiques as well, and so on and so on. Well, you Tim won't, but I'll try. I care about the integrity of the show for everyone. Thank you very much.
Me.
So, without anything else said, it's time to ask Tim the question. Tim, what did you think of Resident Evil? Welcome to Raccoon City.
Oh, well, first I gotta say, because you said it, I absolutely hate the title. I hate the title so much.
That's terrible, yeah, and I agree.
It's just so dumb. Like, it's I mean, there's so many like movies that just use the same title. Like, there's like 3 Black Christmases, there's like 3 Halloweens.
It wouldn't have been an amazing title, but Resident Evil Raccoon City would have been better than Welcome to
totally
Raccoon City.
Yeah. Yeah, and like that's like one of the weird things that's like not even like a thing in the game. Like, I don't know, maybe there's like a billboard or something in the game that says it that I can't remember, but it's not like that's a big like phrase or thing you see in the game that just like you can just call it Resident Evil. If you need to have something to differentiate it, like, I don't know, Resident Evil Origins, or like Resident Evil Biohazard, like the Japanese title, anything I think would be fine. But just, I don't know, Welcome to Raccoon City, I hate it. Anyway, so you said you weren't really that excited going in. Surprisingly, I actually was really excited for this for a couple of reasons. One, I saw this right before Thanksgiving, and I was just really happy to have 4 days off of work.
Sure.
And then I was just also happy to be going to the theater again. Like, I did go see, like I said, Venom 2 earlier this year, which was a lot of fun. But that was still like I guess that was only about 1 month ago. But I was craving the movie experience, and I was a little nervous going in because I'm vaccinated and everything, and I know stuff is like safer now, but I still had a little bit of concern. But luckily, surprise, surprise, the theater was not packed, even though it technically was opening day. Even though like there are some people that they did like really early screenings for this, because like I saw like people online that were talking about it on like Monday and Tuesday and stuff.
Yeah,
which that was surprising.
They're preview screenings, I think, for like a day or two.
But so anyway, though, I was excited just to be going to the movies, but also I feel like I'd been seeing the trailer a lot, and I didn't have high expectations from the trailer, but what I thought was we would get a movie that was kind of cheap, kind of cheesy, but was going to be a lot of fun. I wasn't expecting a great movie. I wasn't expecting to come out of it and be like, wow, this is the best video game movie ever. They really did justice to the games. I was expecting to be like, oh, you know what? That was like, whatever, an hour, 40, 50 minutes of, just a lot of fun, some cheesiness, some stuff to laugh at, some references I got. Did it succeed in that front? Maybe a little. I'm still a little confused, I'm not sure, even though it's been like a little over a week for me. I don't know if I've like totally parsed my feelings out. I don't think it's a good movie, but there were parts where I was entertained. There was definitely cheesy stuff that I laughed at. Sometimes I was laughing at stuff because I was like, oh, I recognize that from the game. Sometimes I was laughing at something because it was like so wildly different from the game, or like just so kind of dumb and cheesy. There was definitely stuff that like made me mad. Because I was just like, like why are you putting this like dumb song in here? Like, there's definitely some weird. It's very strange because there's some stuff that feels like it is so dedicated to trying to get the games right, like, to the point where it's like, all right, you didn't need to make like the set look exactly like, the police station and stuff. Like some stuff like looks like really close to the game, or at least my memories of it. But then there's some stuff that's just like, characters acting like wildly different than your kind of expectations for the game. And also it did kind of remind me of the 2019 Hellboy, where it's like, oh, this is an R-rated movie, so we should say the F word like every other line, right? Like, I don't know, it feels weird to like I think like in later games on Resident Evil, like they swear and stuff, but I don't know, it still feels weird kind of seeing the more classic like 1 and 2 characters just saying like, I don't know, F this. I
feel like the 2 and 3 remakes did have a lot of swearing. Like, Claire and Jill had some, they weren't afraid to drop some F-bombs in those 2 games.
Yeah. So I guess like in summary, I would say there is some stuff that's kind of fun here. There are parts that I laughed. There's a lot of stuff that's wrong with it. There was some genuine stuff that I was like, oh, I like this. I think in particular a lot of the zombie stuff, I was like, oh, this is not that bad. But then I think some of the other monsters are just like, oof. I don't think really had the best budget to pull this off. But then again, there was stuff that I'm like, well, at least they are trying to kind of do this. But yeah, then there are just some weird choices, and this is something that is really hard to separate the fan side of myself from. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's a really, really weird mixed bag that attempts some cool things, but isn't really successful, and makes weird, baffling choices that don't work, but I guess in some ways are kind of entertaining. And even despite that, though, I will take this over all 6 movies of the previous franchise any day of the week.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with that. Yes, I will take this over those 6 previous films without even thinking about it for a split second. Like, it's not even like those movies just felt insulting. So I also had a very conflicted sense when I left the theater and I was thinking about this movie.
You still didn't know how to feel.
I had a really weird time parsing my thoughts, because I think ultimately what I come down to is that it isn't really that good a movie, right?
Right.
It's overstuffed. It kind of moves too quickly, and that was kind of one of the fears of smashing the 2 plots together, is that everything's just running at like such a frantic pace that there's no like time to soak it in. And if I was to describe the experience of playing a Resident Evil game, and all the references are cool and all, but if I want something from a Resident Evil movie, and I don't think we need Resident Evil movies, but if we're going to get them, I would say that the thing that they should translate more than anything is the feeling of being in the game. And the feeling of being in the game is not a fast-paced thing. It's a slow trying to survive, trying to figure out the correct paths, trying to figure out where the key item, so on and so on. And I'm not saying, obviously I don't expect them to have like repetition of all the enemies. I don't expect them to have as many puzzles, because it's a movie, you can't do it, it's a different medium. But that feeling, which I do think other movies, like I think Resident Evil is very heavily inspired by Aliens. I think when I watch Aliens, I had this realization a couple of years ago that there's so much of what I like about Resident Evil and Aliens. And there's a lot of inspiration in there, and not just because in Resident Evil 2, like Claire and Sherry are a direct like comparison to Ripley and you, because that is definitely there, but just in general, the idea of a safe room at one point, the idea of like finding the files and the documentation of what happened here before they got there, the elite team of soldiers coming in, there's a lot of what I like in that. So oh, that's an accident. So I do think it's overstuffed. I do think some of the actors aren't great. Some of the characterizations are a bit weird. Some of them are pretty solid, though. Not all of them are bad. Bizarrely, though, here's the thing. Is a 1 hour 47-minute reel of things to make me smile because they're showing me things from the games. It was shockingly enjoyable to actually watch that first time. Now, I don't know if I'm going to ever, like if I try to watch the second time, it may just completely fall apart. But I have to admit, there was certain things that they started referencing very early on, and then it happened all the way throughout the film. And before people say it, I know that I have complained ad nauseum about other franchises doing this a lot recently. I know that I've complained about, hey, you recognize this thing, hey, remember this from the last movie? I think the context for this is very specific. It's why I pointed out that it's my favorite video game series, and why those previous 6 movies were nothing but constantly shitting on everything I liked about it, right?
Yes.
So something as simple in this is them dropping a line that references something obscure in the game made me smile. And then there was more things that made me smile, and it kept happening. And obviously there's things they get wrong, and there's things we're going to talk about. But I have to admit, on a very superficial level, it was kind of an enjoyable watch. But it's not a good movie. It's probably the most fun I've had at a bad movie in quite some time, but not in the traditional so bad it's good kind of way, which is why I'm thinking it might fall apart on a second viewing. But yeah, so I'm going to try and name everything I like, right? All the references I like, I'm going to try and name them all in spoilers. I will, but that's my general feeling on it, because I felt quite positive as I was watching it, even though I kind of knew this isn't actually that good. And it comes from the director of I mean, the 47 Meters Down movies aren't terrible, they're just kind of okay. But the guy also made
Strangers Pray at Night.
He did do that, but that's not the one that I was going to bring up to like shit on him. Where is it? Oh god, where is it? We did it. Oh, there it is. The Other Side of the Door. Right, that movie was garbage.
Oh, he did that?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Johannes Roberts did that movie, and that movie was absolute trash. So I'm glad I didn't know that going in, because I probably would have went with this really like, I hate this guy. What did he do?
Yeah. So, I mean, apparently he's a big fan of the games.
You can tell. I think you can tell. Yeah. And you know what? I'll give him this. His favourite character is clearly Claire, and that is a very excellent choice, because I kind of agree. And honestly, the most entertaining thing, since like I was kind of staying away from other people's opinions before I saw it, because it came out a week earlier in the US, so there was a lot of discussion already online. But like the amount of butthurt from people who are complaining that Leon isn't like Leon, and I'm like, yes. Like, and it's not that I want him to not be accurate, but I actually think they do a decent effort of making him a bit of a chump, because here's the thing, Leon Kennedy in Resident Evil 2 is this chumpy rookie who's a bit of a doofus, right? And maybe they play it up a bit too much in the movie, but I was like, you know what, the characterization they're getting right about Leon here, because he looks different, obviously they've went different with the casting and all that, that's cool, but the one thing they've tried to sort of maintain about him and turned up to 11 is the thing that I actually think is the funniest thing about Leon, and I'm like, yes.
I totally agree, and I'm actually a Leon fan. I mean, I don't think there's many characters in the series that like I don't like,
Steve.
But sure, yeah. I mean, I guess no one likes him, but I mean, obviously this doesn't apply to any characters from like 6.
Of course, oh yeah, like Jake and like whoever.
Yeah, but like, you know, most of the main characters from the main games, I'm, you know, fan of. But I do like Leon, but he is definitely one of those like, you know, badass characters that just like fanboys online just love. So I actually really laughed at a lot of the constant shitting on him they do in this movie.
No, it's great.
And like half of it was, oh, this is actually funny in terms of the movie, and half of it is just me laughing, imagining all of these like dudes online getting angry because like, he's the coolest guy and they're making him so stupid.
I don't like. I mean, maybe he had a bit of a fan base after the original 2, but it's 4. Like, because 4 was such a good game and people like it so much and people like it more than the originals. I don't, obviously, and I don't think you do either. Like, we both love 4. 4's a fantastic video game, but I kind of hold a grudge because it took away my classic style of Resident Evil. Right? Yeah. But I think after 4 though, like the fan base for Leon just like no, Leon's like, you know, the guy, like you got cool hair, you got a cool jacket, we all want to be Leon.
And you know what they basically do in this movie? You know, sure, this is a reference you'll probably get, but like they basically like turn him into like Jerry from Parks and Rec. He's just like the one guy that like everyone just hates.
Damn it, Leon.
Like, God damn it, Leon, get out of here. Like all right, everyone, team meeting. Not you, Leon. Go to the front.
Yeah, that cracked me up quite a bit. I took some personal glee in that, and this is maybe just a thing where some of my taste for the game is aligning with the director. And I've often said that Claire's the better character in 2. I think her story's better, and admittedly, her story from 2 is not really in this. They kind of give her a different story, and then part of her story goes to someone else. It's kind of weird. We'll talk about that in spoilers. But I was happy that she was. I mean, it's an ensemble. It kind of splits everyone up, but like she is definitely the one she's the closest to the main character. Like she absolutely is. And I think some of the teases in this kind of imply that if they do get a sequel, I'm actually shocked to. I mean, I won't say it until we get to spoilers because it is a spoiler to say. But the game I think they're implying is going to be the main basis for the sequel is shocking to me. And
okay. I think I know which one you're talking about.
I mean, I'm happy about it, but I am shocked as well. Because if it wasn't for the fact that this director cared about Claire, I don't think it would be the case. Like, it would never be that.
Yeah, for sure.
So...
And one thing, I hate to even bring it up, but just to kind of get it out of the way, because there's definitely some characters that I think are wildly different, wildly different, like than they are in the games. But when I say that, I am talking, just about personality. Like, yes, they do. Like change like some of the race of some of the characters and stuff, and I don't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah,
I think that's totally fine.
It's worth pointing out because there are shitheads on the internet who are going to complain about it. And here's the thing: Resident Evil, the main cast, by and large, in all the classic games, are all white. So
they're white as hell.
Yeah. So quite frankly, like it could use a little bit of a shake up.
Yeah.
There's absolutely.
Totally.
I like the main examples I think we have off the top of my head are Leon, who's now Hispanic, and Jill, who is the actress who I like quite. I wasn't really into Killjoys that much, but she was on that show and she was quite good. She was easily the best part of that show. Yeah. So, but and Jill's character does feel a bit different personality wise, though. It's definitely,
I mean, I believe it's I believe at one point Wesker says, "You're a freak, Valentine," which. In this movie she kind of is. She's kind of like a crazy badass gun nut, as opposed to the master of unlocking.
They've kind of given her Barry's like.
Oh, that's I can see that.
A Barry, they give her a bit of Barry's character, and what's funny is that, and this is not like a big plot point because it never comes back up later really, but early on in the film you see Claire pick a lock, and Chris points out like, who can even pick a lock like that? And I thought, wait, why is Claire the master of unlocking? What are you doing? What are you doing?
I mean, and I'm really surprised that he didn't just outright say that, because we did get another joke to a pretty infamous line earlier in the film.
Let's not spoil it. Yeah,
I would say it, but I was really surprised they never actually said that.
Yeah, I really thought they were going to, or if anything, I thought maybe they're doing this to set up later on, like her and Jill are going to Claire's going to try and pick a lock later that's harder, and she's not going to be able to, and then Jill's going to come in and go, but wait, I'm the master of unlocking.
Yeah.
So yeah, it plays with it kind of swaps some stories around. It's kind of weird that a lot of Claire's plot is actually more tied to something from Resident Evil 1 rather than Resident Evil 2, which is kind of surreal. But it's like at least a lot of the things that are in here are at least trying to be like things from I think just to get a couple of things that I don't think are spoiler out of the way, like just simple things like the shotgun they have at the police station is actually, at least it looks to my eyes, the same shotgun that they actually have in Resident Evil 2. And I noticed that like when you see the box of ammo, it is the same green box that's in the Resident Evil 2 remake, at least. Okay. There's little like details like that that's just kind of nice to see.
And you'd probably pick up on this a little better than me, but did they use like some of the actual music from the game? I couldn't quite tell, but there were like scenes where I was like, oh, is this kind of like the save room music?
I don't think so, because I'll be honest, if they use save room music at any point in this movie, I'd have given it a 10. Right? I would have marked out hard for music from the games popping up, even if it was like a mix of it or something, a new version. I don't know, I think like at the time when I was watching it, there's kind of stuff that I felt like I couldn't tell, like, all right, is this music from the game, or are they kind of trying to, what's the word, like
trying to get something that kind of has that same feeling across.
If there was any, I didn't notice it, so I don't think it was super like. I mean, I'm sure if someone does a comparison, like. Because I was kind of expecting it to be. I thought like at least the end credits theme might be like like do 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 as the credits play or something. It never was, but
they give us something.
It'd have been a nice time for it if they were if they were tempted.
Yeah. So fan stuff aside, like just looking at this as an actual movie, it really is baffling why they wanted to do this. Merging of the two games. Like if I had to guess, I wonder if it is something like Resident Evil 2 just maybe has more like popular characters. So like there's some studio exec like, oh, this Leon guy's popular, we gotta have him in, and then like, all right, well, if we do that, we're gonna have to like do both stories or something like that. I don't know, but I think that's probably, as a film, that's probably what makes it suffer the most, is you're smashing so many characters and stories together that it really is just constantly jumping around and not letting stuff breathe, and just really bombarding the audience with like information, because they really want to give you like the information from the game. Like characters are constantly talking like revealing stuff and using each other's names. Like you can tell they really want people to know these are the characters from the games, because they're just constantly like saying everyone's name all the time.
I think there's probably a few reasons for this. I think one of them might be that they wanted to, like, maybe they've got in mind a trilogy and they want the first one to be like the first set of games, the second game to second movie to be like another couple of games, and then so on. I think one of the reasons might be though is that they don't trust the idea, because we all accept this in video games and we were all cool with it back in the day, but I don't think they trust the idea of switching to new characters for the second movie. And it's not that they're getting rid of them, and it's not that they're getting rid of like Jill and Chris if they're when we go to Resident Evil 2, because we all know Jill's going to be the main character in 3 and Chris is going to be back for Code Veronica. We know that as fans of the games. But I think they might worry that a movie audience would say, wait, why have we switched characters? Like, is this like a sequel? Because a lot of movies do that, where they'll just get rid of characters because they just can't get the actors back or something.
That makes sense.
And I wonder if like that was part of it. It's like, no, we have to introduce the main characters from 1 and 2 together so they all feel equally important. And they all feel like... So I think that may be part of it. Maybe part of it
see that,
is also just this idea. Because not only is it 1 and 2 smashed together, it also goes out of its way to make sure that 3 can't happen.
Right.
At least not in the same way it does in the game anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think is kind of so strange about it, because IP is so big nowadays, and everyone wants to have a big successful franchise that the studio can just make more and more movies about. So it's strange to me that I'm sure the idea behind this was, hey, this is a popular franchise, let's make movies about it. Maybe if they're successful, we can have like a string of movies, but then like you're automatically like limiting the amount of stories you can base it off of. You're
burning the first 3 games in one movie, and there's not really anything from 3 in it really. But it actively stops it from happening, at least in the same way.
You can't do it.
So it's it's kind of a weird choice. I maybe it's just this assumption that the last franchise got 6 movies, we can't really assume we're going to get that, so let's just condense everything down so we can do everything in like 3 movies, and hopefully that'll happen.
And also, I mean, not like that they would, I doubt that they would ever want to do this, but it also, I feel like you can't really do 0 now either, but I mean, they probably wouldn't do that anyway.
Oh, they would do it anyway, I think.
But just they
didn't even bother putting Rebecca on the Stars team. So I don't expect it to materialize. And it is a little bit frustrating that if we like how long will it be now before someone else is allowed to just do an adaptation of the first game? Like I know we sort of like turn around and do reboots quite quickly, comparatively speaking, but even then though, let's say this has not done it well enough for a sequel, I don't think they'll do an adaptation of the first game next chance. Like they'll probably jump straight to doing like a movie based on 7, because they were talking about that, or 4. Like they'll jump ahead to something else. Like, so it's almost just lucky that, like, as much as he's not that great a director, it's kind of lucky they got someone who actually seems to care about those early games, because a lot of people don't, which is a shame.
For sure. And then are we still getting that Netflix live action series or whatever?
Yeah. But that is like so far removed from do you know the premise of that is like it's two timelines and it's like Wesker, but the Wesker children in the future.
Oh god, that's right.
It's like this weird like concept. Because if I'm going to credit this with some things, like as much as I don't necessarily like the idea of 1 and 2 both happening in the same night, I do appreciate that the entire movie takes place over one night, right? And it even does a thing with it constantly tells you the time, and it gives you this really good sense of okay, it's the progression of the night, the things getting worse. You know, I like that.
Yeah. And they even like went back to the actual date. Like this takes place in it's 98, right?
Yeah, 98. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which is cool. Like I'm okay with that. I don't think Resident Evil needs to be a period piece. Although, admittedly, maybe if they'll have like phones on them, it's a bit harder to tell the story. So maybe that's partly why you do it that way. But
sure.
It's so funny that with the first Resident Evil movie came out in 2002. So it'd only been 4 years removed from 1998 when that first movie came out, and now it's like 23 years since 1998.
Wow, I never thought about that.
So, there was a moment actually because Claire like has a video to show Chris, and she pulls out a VHS, and I went, wait, he just has a VCR in his house? Oh, it's 1998. Never mind. It's time period appropriate. Never mind.
Yeah.
Because like only a small select people will have a VCR now, and they're probably all over a certain age, right? I don't buy that Chris, if this was Chris in present day at this age, I don't buy to have a VCR in his house unless he's some sort of like hipster collector, dude.
For sure. Yeah.
So that's just my feelings on it, but
and then I do like I feel like a lot of stuff has been talking about kind of how ludicrous and over the top it was, and how we're smiling at the references. But I will give it a compliment and say there were some scenes that I thought were genuinely good.
There's some creepy scenes. There's definitely some scenes where there's like zombies coming out of shadows and things like that, where it looks quite good.
I think the zombie stuff was definitely like the most effective. Like those were the times where I was like, oh, like this is getting closer to the feel of like the Resident Evil games. Like it never quite hits it, but it's like, oh, okay, now we are like doing like actual like good horror stuff.
And
I kind of feel this way about like a lot of his movies, because I feel like with like 47 Meters Down and like Strangers Prey at Night, like those were also kind of weird bags where like I didn't love everything about it, but every now and again you would get a glimmer of like, ooh, this is a really good scene. And like I just wonder if I don't know if he's like a director that just kind of like maybe has like bigger plans that he's not always able to realize, or if he just kind of accidentally stumbles onto like really good stuff every now and again.
He also wrote the screenplay for this, and while that's probably a good thing in the sense that he cares about the games, I do wonder if like maybe he'd be a better director working off someone else's better script.
Sure.
Maybe that would he could just focus on the filmmaking, the visuals, and the way the scenes feel, or at least have a co-writer to iron out and redraft what he's done to make it more coherent and
hey, I got an idea. Why don't they just hire us to write it?
Aye, we could do it. Yeah, I think we'd knock out a banger of a Resident Evil script, quite frankly. And I read the George Romero script once upon a time. I found it on the internet.
Ooh, I've never actually read it.
It's really interesting. It does make some changes. The biggest change I remember is that Chris isn't a part of STARS. He's actually just like living on a farm that's like relatively close to the mansion, and he kind of gets involved with the team separately. But
it's like imagine I'm in like overalls.
But I will say this: other than that, it's actually probably far more faithful than this is in terms of like the characters, all the STARS team members being there, who like betrays who. Barry has like a big plot point in it. There was like, and it kind of went through a lot of the big set pieces that the game had. Obviously, it didn't spend as long doing a lot of them. And if I remember correctly, I remember thinking they got to the lab quite quickly, which is something that I would say that the first movie was guilty of too. Although I wouldn't say this one is actually. I'd say this one actually does. It feels like you're going into Act 3 by the time they start going down in elevators and ladders. And I was like, this feels like that part of a Resident Evil game where we're descending into the other parts of the city and whatnot. So,
jeez, is there anything more disappointing than like having a movie that's supposed to be done by George Romero and then it ends up being Paul Wes Anderson.
I thought you could swap out George Romero's name for like hundreds of other names, and the statement would be just as equal, if not stronger, depending on the name.
I love Romero, but yeah.
But yeah, he wrote a script for Resident Evil, and it was very, like I say, there was that one big change with Chris, but and I think that was to give some conflict that there was an outsider who was there with them, and I think maybe the other thing was that they kind of stuck together as a team pretty much all the time, as opposed to like being on their own, which is obviously a big part of Resident Evil, is that you're wandering around on your own. But but hey, maybe I'll read it again someday and like do a full like.
I'd actually be interested in checking that out. Yeah.
So probably time for spoilers, I imagine. And get into the juicy stuff. So full spoilers.
Once again entered the world of spoiler horror.
Oh dear, yeah. So spoilers from this point on for Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. First thing to talk about, because it opens with a flashback, and it's the orphanage, which they actually make the outside of the orphanage look like the orphanage from the Resident Evil 2 remake, which was kind of neat. That was one of the set photos we saw some time ago, and they do a thing here where Claire and Chris are actually at this orphanage, and if I remember correctly in the games, I do think there is like their backstory is that their parents were gone at a young age. Like I think that was a thing in the games. I don't think that's completely out of nowhere. Obviously, them being at this orphanage specifically, while Birkin was like taking kids, is a new thing. But and the idea that Chris is like like this is one of these things where you can tell it's a bit rushed and too condensed, because they set up this thing where Chris is like Mr. Umbrella, is like, no, Umbrella like paid for my education, and like I love William Birkin, they're all great. It feels like they barely do anything with that, other than the fact that he tells them to like F off maybe like later on when he's like fighting him. Like that's it. Like there's no real big arc for him to go through where he realizes that the people he thought he could trust like try to experiment on his sister and try to whatever. But yeah, that's because this is the thing. Before we get to any of the references, because the references don't come till after this first scene, which is basically a young Lisa Trevor encounters Claire. Claire sort of sees her late one night and talks to her, and I was like, don't get me wrong, like I do kind of love that Lisa Trevor from the remake of Resident Evil is like a pivotal plot point in a movie. That did make me smell a little bit, but it's like, okay, so we're giving Claire like a friendly relationship with Lisa. Interesting.
It's very strange.
Interesting. I don't actually hate the idea of Lisa being more sympathetic, even though she's an enemy in the game. I think like her backstory, the tragedy of like what happened to her because of her father, like, which they don't go into in this at all. Like they say her name's Lisa Trevor, they did not mention who her father was, or that the father helped build the mansion, or like any of that.
I think that's what the problem with her is I liked having her in the movie. I thought she looked like really good. I thought she was very creepy with like this kind of like weird mask and everything that she's wearing, but ultimately it amounts to very little other than her kind of just being like a MacGuffin. When that's not really the right term, but kind of just like, what do you call it? Like just like this, like I guess like a Deus Ex Machina kind of thing out of nowhere, where like she has like one little part kind of halfway towards the end of the movie or whatever, but like you never really learn anything about her. And I think it's super weird that it's kind of like, oh yeah, they kind of have a friendly relationship, but also like it doesn't really seem like they make any effort to like take her with them before like obviously the city explodes. Like they don't know it's gonna explode at the time, but like it seems weird.
Technically I don't think it explodes. I think it's more like they like blow up the underground, so it all just kind of falls into it's like implodes almost.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what it looked like. I mean the CG wasn't great, so I mean it wasn't but there was no mushroom cloud, because I was expecting a mushroom cloud. I don't think there was one. But no, you're right. I think you get the idea that this is obviously an experiment gone wrong. That's who Lisa is, but other than that you get nothing. And I guess it shows you this is awful, they're doing this to kids, and this is like what happened to at least one of them. But the backstory of like the mad architect who was poised with building this insane mansion, and then they did this to his family, to his daughter, like at the end of his tenure. Like it's a really like like interesting bit of mythology in the games, and it's just like in the movie it's just like she's just kind of a random friendly monster that Claire befriends.
And this has to be like just confusing as hell if you've never played the games, right?
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you just take it at face value and you're like, because later on they outright say that, you know, William's like taking kids from the orphanage and experimenting on them, which is from the games. You know, that's brought up in Resident Evil 2. They are doing that. Umbrella's taking kids from the orphanage. Although some of them they're putting through college and like the academy and training to be, you know, stars. So you know, some kids get a better time than others, for sure. I have to say though that when the title screen came up, which notably did not include the Welcome to Raccoon City, right? They just sort of have the sign after it. But when the title came up and it was in the classic red font that they've not used in such a long, because that was like Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and I think Code Veronica. I think they changed it when the remake came out, is when it turned into a different font. But that classic block red Resident Evil font, I have to admit, I kind of marked out a little bit for that. I was like, oh my god, it's just the classic like PS1 font.
How crazy would you have gone if they actually had like the voice come on and say it? Oh my god,
I would have yelled, I would have cheered in the theater if I actually heard someone go, Resident Evil. That would have
Welcome to Raccoon.
I would have freaked out if that had happened. And like immediately, like you're presented with a close up of the cheeseburger and the truck driver, and obviously it's a little bit different because Claire's in the truck with him, but it's like they're really doing the fan service here. They're like copying like little moments like that.
Now there's one thing I do want to talk about. So before that you got the little bit of like the text on screen, right?
Oh sure, the little explaining that the town is like only the poor people are left because everyone else has already moved out because it's a shit town.
So a weird thing about that is I really thought, because it seems to emphasize at the end that like, the only people that are still living in this town are poor people, and they're being slowly poisoned by this big corporation. So I thought that there was going to be kind of this like class like kind of angle to the movie, but there really isn't. Like it made it seem like they were gonna kind of gear up for something like that and kind of have like a message about it. But
I think it was just explaining how they're getting away with it, that no one's going to care about just the poor people that are left, other than a few like police. Obviously William's still there because he's still experimenting and shit, but like other than that, it's like, I mean, I do kind of like the vibe of like it being a little bit emptied out because Umbrella's ran it into the ground, because it's a big thing in the games that Umbrella has kind of taken over the city, and they're treating it like their little playground where they can have all their labs and they can do all their shit. Like that feeling I think's fine,
It just kind of stood out to me just because I don't know, it just seemed like I thought you might be coming up like with kind of a newer angle on it, but it didn't really seem to infect too much of the movie. But I mean it's fine.
I had decent atmosphere. I think it added to the atmosphere a little bit. It set the mood, like here's what the town is like now. Do you know what's funny? Because Claire's in the truck, and I was thinking like, oh, this is a fine like change. Like, I get why you're kind of like smushing this a bit, but I was thinking, oh, this is a shame. That means we don't get her on the bike. But
that's true.
But of course we do get her on the bike. It just happens a little bit later. Right. But I was a little disappointed. I was like, oh no, I can't want her like arriving in the bike in the rain like she does in the game. So they hit like a zombie who like gets back up, and the truck driver tries to like hit on her, and like there's just a lot of these weird little moments, but it's setting up, but
the zombie bites his dog.
The zombie bites his dog, and then the dog bites him, and so we do get you bit me, like you mother effer. Like, so it's not quite because the classic line in the original Resident Evil 2 is he bit me. It wasn't quite that, but I appreciated the close line.
Yeah. And I do think there was kind of a cool moment here where like they're like freaking out about this dead body in the road, and then they're kind of like looking away, and when they look back she's gone, and then they kind of are just looking out into like the darkness of the woods, and I thought that was like a genuinely good, cool, creepy moment.
Yeah, there's some nice shots here or there absolutely is. Yeah, because they do this thing in this movie where obviously it does spread through biting, obviously directly, but most of the city is actually infected because of the water supply, and I think this is just a plot device because they want it all to sort of like happen in one night. So because if
that makes sense.
Because if it was spreading like person to person, you know, because in the games there's like a month or 2 months between 1 and 2, so it makes sense that it's taking time to like spread through the population and it's built up and then sort of crescendoed. Whereas here it's like, oh no, everything's just kind of happening now. Like everyone's kind of turning properly over the 1 or 2 days, and that's why it's like this night is everything's going down. So we're introduced to Leon, who is late for work. He's got a night shift and he's a rookie. He goes to a diner, and that's also where we're introduced to most of the stars team. We're introduced to Jill, Wesker, and I think Richard is there as well. Like he's the third guy there.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I wasn't really too sure who he was supposed to be.
Yeah, well, it wasn't. I don't think it was Brad, so I think it must have been just by default. I think it was Richard.
Like Brad Vickers is, I mean, other than like kind of the main characters, like Brad is like the other guy that kind of stands out in my head.
He's the fifth one. Yeah. After the main 4, he's the 5th one. Oh, actually, no, he's the 6th one because the main 5. Sorry, I was forgetting Wesker in my main. Yeah. Because you got Jill with Barry, you got Chris with Rebecca, and then you got Wesker. Those are the main 5. Yeah. So we have to talk about Jill Sandwich, though.
Okay. Yeah.
We have to bring so she's a bit of a marksman, and Leon's falling asleep in the counter at the diner, and like the Wesker bets her that she can't hit the bottle off his head. He's put like the ketchup bottle on his head, and she pulls out her gun, and he's like, "Don't be crazy! No, with this toy gun with the dart, not with a real gun." And she like proves how good she is by throwing the gun at him and hitting the bottle instead of even shooting. And and then she grabs Wesker's sandwich, and he goes to he's like, "Hey, that's mine." And she's like, "No, it's Jill's sandwich." No. And it's a stupid line, but I'm not gonna lie, it made me laugh.
No, I mean 100%. Like I guess I feel a little hypocritical because there's probably so many other movies that if they made a dumb line like this, I would rolled my eyes until they fell out my ass. But this.
Do you know what I think is? I think those classic games are cheesy, right? And they have really cheesy dialogue. Yeah. So
exactly,
like maybe it's because I'm a fan of the games, and I'm getting in with the spirit that it's okay for this to be a bit cheesy. That line works for me.
Like those original games, like they're kind of like modeled after like B horror movies. Like they're not supposed to be, like these huge serious, epic kind of things. Like which later, like we got more entries that did take itself more seriously and stuff. Which I do like, but yeah, there is kind of like a cheesiness, B level quality to these originals that I like that I felt in this movie a little bit.
Yeah, the one thing they introduce here, because Jill comes up and because a couple of cops come in who it turns out later are Bravo team, even though just like regular cops, but sure, whatever. They're going up to the Spencer estate because someone's reported a mysterious body or something. And they kind of like just give Leon shit because he's like, he apparently shot a partner in the ass by accident.
That's right.
And they give him hell for it, they make fun of him, and they leave. And Jill comes up and says hello, is a bit more friendly. And they made Jill kind of flirty in this, which is fine, I guess. But like, even though like in the Resident Evil 3 remake, they definitely made her a bit more like attitude-y. Like, and I like that because actually one of them, like Resident Evil 3 remake is not a great remake, but one of the things I think they actually improved upon was the characterization of Jill. I think she actually was really likable. But they make her a little bit flirty, and the waitress at the diner points out that she's only got eyes for the big guy, implying Wesker. And I thought, don't know if I like that.
Yeah, that's very strange.
Especially when they make it clear that Chris is into Jill, and I thought, if they put a love triangle in my Resident Evil movie, how dare they? Now, it's actually not a big deal. It's really just there so that she feels more betrayed later.
Are you Team Wesker or Team Redfield?
It's just there to make the betrayal a bit more personal, because it's clearly I mean it doesn't even necessarily go out of its way to say she's in love with him or anything. It's just like maybe she's got the hots for him, like at least to a third party person. That's kind of what it looks like. But you know, it's not actually that big a deal because the movies move through so many things so fast that we never have to have an awkward, oh my god, I was in love with you and now you're not that good. Like,
yeah,
you know, because
I was in love with you and now you're not that good.
Well, that's the other thing is Wesker's a lot more like a likable guy to start off in this.
Okay, so probably out of all of the characterizations that are kind of mismatched or different, this probably pissed me off the most because I don't really like this idea of like he kind of seems like just a normal guy who's maybe a little bit of a doofus and is kind of just like, I don't know, basically kind of falls into like working for Umbrella. And like I don't really like this as much as like, you know, he should be kind of like cold, calculating, like, you know, very like sneaky and underhanded. And this, it just seems like, you know, he kind of, skipping ahead a little bit, but he just randomly gets his Palm Pilot and is kind of like, what is this? And is just like following it throughout the movie, like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do this.
It's more like he kind of got roped into following orders for someone sinister, and it's not even Umbrella. We'll get to, you know, it's the post-credit scene really to talk about that, but I'm glad you said yes there. I was a little bit worried that Tim just left the theater when the credits started and didn't see the mid-credit scene. I
did not stay till the end, so I don't know if there was an end scene, but I
googled
the mid-credit I saw.
Yeah, I googled it to make sure before I left.
Okay.
I was like, is there another scene at the end? And there was not, so I left.
And also, I wasn't crazy about the guy they got to play Wesker. Well, I don't know, he just, I think it is part of it is that, yeah, he did seem like, look more likable. Like I wanted someone that's just maybe looked and acted more of an asshole. Yeah,
I like the actor because I like he's good at Umbrella Academy. He's good in that show.
Oh, I didn't realize that was him. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, wow.
So I like him, but he's not really right for what I think of as like classic Wesker. Yeah. I mean, I was still relieved when they showed that like someone was making him at least work against the team or having like an ulterior motive, because you have to have Wesker betray them. Like what? Like sure, maybe he's not the maniacal evil like supervillain that he is in the game, but like you have to like have that element to it. So interesting tactic, but that was definitely one of the first big things that stuck out characterization wise. So yeah. And in fact, even like everyone calling Leon the Rookie was definitely more of a Resident Evil 2 remake thing, which is not a complaint because you know, the Resident Evil 2 remake is great, so it's not like
absolutely, yeah.
There's no complaining on that front.
And I will say since we're kind of talking about all these people now, I do feel like Chris was pretty spot on, like as far as like how I think of the characters from the game.
Yeah, he's not. I think Chris and Claire are the ones that are probably. Even though Claire's story gets swapped around a bit, like I think Claire and Chris feel the most like just like the game, as opposed to. I agree with that. Yeah, you know, whereas the others, I feel like they're a little bit, you know, remixed a little to make it fresh or just to serve the plot they want to do instead or whatever. So, actually, the next time we see the Stars team is when Chief Irons comes in, who's Donald Logue, who's an actor I like, comes in. And this is another thing that's changed. Don't get me wrong, he is a scumbag in this, but he's just kind of an asshole as opposed to a complete murderous psychopath that he is in the game.
Yes.
Which, and I actually like, as much as I would have loved if we got separate movies to flesh out both stories, I would have loved to have Chief Irons like abducting people and killing them and stuff. Like,
without a doubt, yeah.
Like I get why if you're cutting it down, taking out the subplot that he's doing that, like it's an obvious cut. I get it. Like I do understand it. I
was surprised at how long he like stood around.
Yeah, because he comes into the Stars room, which again I like. There's a Stars room, that's neat. And says, "Oh, Bravo teams like went missing. They're not responding up at the Spencer estate. So take the chopper." And so one of the lines we have to talk about, and I actually thought this was a neat line to fans because I think Jill saying, because she just randomly says to someone, "Hey, what would you think is worse, like getting swallowed whole by a snake or getting munched on by a great white shark?" And I went, okay, I appreciate that line because it did two things. It was a nod to the game, which has a zombie shark and a big giant snake. But it's also letting me know as a fan that you're not giving me those things. The reason why you're referencing those in this little joke is because you're telling me we don't have time for that. We're not doing it. So don't expect it.
We fit a lot of things in this movie, but
yes,
we can't get everything.
Honestly, if I have a disappointment as far as monsters goes, you know, outside of like any complaints about specific things, is that I was kind of hoping there was one that I didn't know about that was going to be a surprise, and there wasn't.
Yeah.
There was no, because I was like, because I think at one point
came out of nowhere.
Yeah, because that's the thing. At one point, I think one of the kids, I think it's maybe Sherry later in the movie, or no, it's when she wakes up from her nightmare. She describes a slimy green monster with like claws, and I was like, is that a hunter? Are we going to see a hunter? And I got excited, and we never saw a hunter, and because they always pick the licker. The licker gets all the glory, but the hunter, which. Yeah, the hunter first showing
Hunters
up.
are great.
Yeah, when the hunter first shows up in Resident Evil 1, it is like legitimately maybe the most oh shit moment I've ever had in a video game is when those hunters first showed up.
Yeah.
So, I'm saying, let's have some hunter love.
I think kind of the actually also one thing that was kind of a surprise to me was the crows.
Yeah, I got crows.
But I mean, I don't think anyone's favorite monster from the games are the crows, but
no, they used them right, because it wasn't like they're a big threat. It was more just we see a crow that's clearly deformed, and then Jill just shoots it.
Yeah. So the thing that I think is that I like having the monsters, but I think it's kind of weird that like it feels like we only see just like one kind of like little instance of like we get one little bit of like the liquor, we get. What, like one or two scenes with the dogs?
I think dog's okay, because you get some teasing of it, and then you get one proper big scene with a dog, and then it's okay, that's kind of enough. The liquor, it did kind of feel like there maybe should have been like another scene before. I mean, I think the ending to the liquor is fine. I think it's just that maybe there should have been like another scene before that where, okay, the threat of the liquor is around, but we have to worry about a liquor now for a while.
Yeah. It just feels weird because it's like, it's so like, we introduce it and then we're done with it.
Yeah. That's the problem. See if they saw a liquor in the police station before they left, and they had to be like scared shitless, try to leave because there's a liquor kicking about, and then they run into another one at the orphanage, and that's when, and we still get, and the scene plays out the same way. It'd be fine, I think. I'd have no problem with it. But it does feel a bit, it's a liquor. Oh, and the liquor's gone. Okay.
Feel it's kind of like you know what movie does that kind of thing well is Jurassic Park, where it's like like you.
Well, you mean the most successful monster movie of all time? Yes, sure.
But like there's stuff where like they have scenes with raptors, but then it's not just like, all right, we escaped the raptors, now it's on to the next dinosaur. It's like, oh, the raptors come back later, and it all fits very well and works.
Yeah, and that Jurassic Park is like, okay, your big bad's the T-Rex, arguably the raptors are actually the big because they're the most scary ones, but you've got your two main things. You've got the T-Rex and the raptors, and then you've got like one-off appearances by other more friendly creatures, and that's kind of how that movie functions. This obviously wants to get in a few of the famous monsters, so I think what we'll do is we'll stick with the Stars team and just follow their plot up to a point, just because I think it'll be easier to talk about than jumping, because I don't remember when it jumped back and forth constantly.
Sure. And one thing, just another kind of like little complaint is I kind of like the idea of Stars. Like in the games, they always felt like they were this kind of special team. Here they kind of just feel like regular cops. Like it didn't really feel like there was much that kind of separated them. I think part of it is kind of having them all just like hanging out and like having like Leon there, you know what I mean, and like it just I don't know, it just all felt like just you're just like regular cops, whereas like when you're playing the game it seems like, oh no, there's like something that are different about them, like these are the people that you bring into.
I think it's kind of there, and that they've got their own little office, and like Irons comes to them as a team and getting the. I don't imagine the regular cops go out in the chopper, like, so. I get what you're saying, but it's like, I think that's just another example of it being smooshed into one night, and they're trying to sell this idea that most of the cops have left, and it's just kind of them and like a few uniforms, and that's it. So, because there's a joke about, we still have a chopper. I thought that got lost in the budget cuts. So, so like, it's fine. But yeah, they're sent out to the Arklay Mountains. They're sent out to like find what happened to. It almost felt like they just wanted to say go and find out what happened to Bravo team, because that's, and I will say the shots of like the light of the helicopter hitting the trees as they're looking over the forest before they land. It feels like the start of the first game. It gave me the oogity boogity goosebumps. I was into that vibe. And of course, there's like a moment for Wesker when he gets the beeper tells him to like tonight's the night, and he finds this little what did you call it?
A Palm Pilot.
A Palm Pilot. Yes. Tim's a little older than I am, so he remembers these weird gadgets.
Hey, it's not like I had one, but
but do you know what's funny though is as soon as I saw this thing and I'm like, okay, so I don't expect them to be reading notes like you do in the games because it's a visual medium, but we do have like Claire shows Chris a video. There's a film reel to watch later on, which we'll definitely talk about. But you have this little Palm Pilot and he's reading some info on it, and I thought, okay, this is kind of like them finding a file in the game. That's kind of neat. And I had the thought, I'm like, I hope there's a map on it. All right, because I'm like, that's such a mechanic in the game. That's what everyone does when you're first playing a Resident Evil game. Before you know the actual layout at the back of your hand, you look at that map constantly. So I did like it a lot when they got to the mansion and he whips out the map and it looks like it's not the same layout as the map in the game, obviously, because it has to match what they're seeing. But the design of it looks like the map in the game, and I kind of appreciated that. So
I like little touches like that. One scene that actually did kind of remind me of something kind of along those lines is when Claire first like breaks into Chris's house. There's like a scene where she picks up like a picture of him. I think she kind of says something to herself like oh, still got the hots for Jill, or like something along those lines. And like I really like that because I kind of that felt to me like when you are exploring a new room, you can find like a picture. Yeah, and you can click on like a painting and it'll just have like a one-line sentence of like what it is or what your reaction is to it. Yeah, I'm almost disappointed. Maybe it was there and I just missed it. But I was hoping that they were going to like in Resident Evil 2, you go in the STARS office. There's like a photo of the STARS team. Yes, I was hoping you'd see that somewhere in the background. And I didn't notice it. That'd be cool. But it seems like exactly the sort of Easter egg they would put in. Is that photo, or maybe the skimpy one of Rebecca in the basketball outfit that Wesker's Wesker's got on his desk. That should have been the end. If they were going to do a scene at the very end of the credits, it should have been Wesker opening his drawer and just look at this photo of Rebecca and be like, "Sweet girl, soon." Another thing I will really give them a lot of props for is the I think like the sets of like the police station and the mansion, like they really look like the game to me. Like
the main halls do, like the rest of it doesn't really that much, but the main hall, when you've down to the red carpet in the middle of the foyer of the mansion, the way it sort of like the way the camera sort of looks at the mansion, treats it like a sense of spectacle before they go in. Them going in and saying, and Wesker even saying we should split up, we can cover more ground. I'm like, oh, that's basically a line from the original Resident Evil. Like he says that's his reasoning. And they split up into two pairs, and I did love that they had like obviously the layout. They don't want to build an entire like set that mimics the layout of the mansion, but I appreciated things like the birdcage, the stuffed owls, the suits of armor, like all these little like textual things that are in the game that like we're not going to do puzzles with the suits of armor, we're not going to do a puzzle with the owls, but these things are here. That's kind of neat.
And it in a way it's kind of a bummer because we. Like because everything is so crammed together, I feel like we don't get to spend like as much time as I'd like to. Like I would love it to just really kind of soak in all these rooms and stuff.
I mean, I don't expect every puzzle in the game to make it into a movie, but if it was just a Resident Evil 1 movie, I would expect more of the locations and at least a couple of the puzzles, because obviously we get one, we get the piano, right? Get it, and it is Moonlight Sonata, which yes, I did when he started playing the keys and it was Moonlight Sonata, I marked out. But instead of that being just like part of one puzzle halfway through the game, this is opening the entrance to the tunnel that takes you to, and I like that the tunnel looked like a little bit like the caves. But but ultimately it was just a big tunnel to get to the lab, and it's like the one lab that is actually connected to both the mansion and the city. So it's effectively saying the lab from 1 and 2 are the same lab. Which I get why you're saying that, but whatever.
I guess and it made me one thing I did kind of get annoyed like at the end of the movie is I was like, wait, how close is like the mansion to the police station? Because it seems like they just go right like to it.
Yeah, it's on the outskirts of the city, so it seems like it's pretty close.
But like I don't know, it just feels like I don't know, like you can just walk there. Like I don't know, like by the end of the movie, it seemed like they're really crunched for time. But I don't know, like I would imagine still like if you're walking like a bunch of miles or something like.
Well, they both kind of they meet in the middle though. They don't actually go all the way in back to the city or vice versa.
Oh, okay.
Because I think if you pay attention to the times, because the time comes up constantly, I think like it takes Wesker like at least like half an hour to run or whatever to the lab. So I mean, it's not like a quick walk.
I don't know. It's not important, but I mean, still, it was something that a little bugged me. But I mean,
and it is a straight line. Like if you imagine, like if you could walk through like where you live in a straight line because there's no houses or buildings or roads that you have to turn around and stuff. Like how quickly could you walk to a location that's like 3 miles away? Probably whatever long it takes you to walk 3 miles, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, this was not something
it doesn't. It's not important at all. It's just like something I couldn't help but kind of think about while watching it.
Brad, unlike the original games, Brad just gets killed like halfway through, and in the helicopter, he ends up crashing the helicopter into the mansion, which doesn't happen in the game, but in the original Resident Evil, you do see a helicopter crash at one. No, wait, no, I think I'm thinking of 3.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of 2. Sorry,
right?
I'm thinking of 2. I'm thinking of 2. It crashes on the roof of the police station.
Oh yeah, because you have to get the hose and.
But there is a scene in the original Resident Evil, and it's not in the remake, where you find like a almost like a control room for like a helipad, like in the mansion. It's like behind like the library where you. Like is that one of the locations you can only get to once you've come back to the mansion after you get the key from the guardhouse? There is like a room that you don't have to go into, but you can go in and you'll get a little cutscene of like looking out at the helipad. It's basically teasing where the end of the game is going to take place, like earlier on. But that's what I'm thinking of. Anyway, a
quick tangent, but just like one of the coolest things I thought when I was playing like the original Resident Evil 2 back in the day is when I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's like something special you have to do to see it, but at one point you see like a zombified Brad Vickers.
Oh yeah. If you get to the police station at the start of the game without picking up any items, you'll see a zombie Brad Vickers, and if you kill him, you get a key which lets you change your outfit.
Okay. I just remember like back in the day, I thought that was like the coolest thing. I was like, whoa, like, 'cause, like it's cool whenever you have something that's kind of like secretive, but then like also just being like, oh, I remember that character, and like, whoa, look at him now.
And in Resident Evil 2 Remake, they didn't do that, but there's a poster of Brad Vickers where he appeared in the original.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So there you go. Bit of trivia for you. So because he opens up the secret passage, he has to kind of not explain everything to Jill, but confesses that he's working for someone and that he can't like go back and try and like protect the others, because Chris and Richard are just getting attacked by zombies. Like their whole thing is that they're going around the dining hall, and like I say, you see the candlesticks, you see like a grandfather clock. I think at one point Chris has a lighter, so that's another sort of like item from the game.
I like that scene a lot. Yeah, and you get the very iconic like that first kind of head turn of the zombie from like the first game. And
Richard, like I knew it was Richard even before they named him, because he's not got like a distinctive color necessarily. It was kind of the same color of the game, but it was actually the fact that he was holding the combat shotgun, which in the game you get the combat shotgun from him if you're playing as Jill. So just so there was attention to details like that, which is kind of neat.
I'm having so much trouble like remembering him. Like in the game, was he the guy that was kind of dying?
Yeah, he gets bit by the snake.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, gotcha.
That's Richard. And you have to go get him some medicine to like some antidote so he won't die.
Okay.
And I think you end up like he ends up on the bed in like one of the save rooms with Rebecca if you played as Chris. No, not ringing a bell. Okay.
Well, no, I mean I remember the snake part. I don't. I forget that part. But there's someone that's on the. You run into someone like on a balcony with a bunch of crows.
That's Forrest.
That's Forrest. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's Forrest. Yeah. The one you run into in the caves is Enrico. Yeah, there's a lot more members in the games. What we're getting to.
Yeah.
Although these aren't all on the main team though. A lot of these guys are on the Bravo team that kind of like disappeared, and you sort of find them here or there. Because Rebecca's part of Bravo team as well, actually. You know, she becomes one of the main characters, but she was there with the first team.
Yeah.
So that's basically all of Chris and Richard stuff. Is just like, you know, Richard gets mauled pretty quickly. Chris has to survive. He's yelling for help. One of the nitpicks I had, and maybe this has been a bit unkind, but I'm like, they fire a lot of their guns, and I feel like isn't Jill hearing this? I know it's a mansion, but like, it's gunfire. There's a lot of machine gun and shotgun fire, and then likewise, it doesn't seem like Chris hears the fact that a helicopter crashes and explodes into the side of the building. Like, I feel like you would hear that anywhere in the building, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a bit nitpicky, but it was kind of weird. It was almost like, we don't want to ruin the silent, like, creepy horror of the other part of the mansion. Yeah. But like, it's an exploding helicopter. Like, he's going to hear it, okay? Like,
yeah. And like, I mean, not to nitpick like too much, but like, because I do really like these scenes, but they didn't like. When I'm thinking about the first Resident Evil game, like I usually don't think of like hordes of zombies. Like it seems like there was like a lot of zombies in this game or in this like sequence, which again I don't necessarily mind because I thought it was cool, but yeah, it didn't feel like super Resident Evil-y to me.
That's a problem that all the movies have had, though. They have a struggle like translating to like movies without turning zombies into a horde, because like I feel like they don't know how to make zombies scary constantly if they're just in ones and twos or whatever.
It's so strange to me, because if you're going for a horror effect, to me it's always so much creepier to just have like a few zombies that are slow, that are kind of like popping out of the corner, out of the darkness. But it seems like so many movies just want that horde of zombies that are just running at you. Yeah, like,
it's not scary. It makes it more of an action movie than a horror movie once you have a horde. It genuinely does. But there are some nice shots there. There's like a really nice shot at one point where like a zombie comes out of the shadows behind Chris. I
like that.
Yeah, there's a couple of neat moments like that. But Jill, after Wesker runs down this tunnel, Jill comes and gets Chris. They're relieved to see each other and that they're both alive, and Jill's like, Chris, Wesker betrayed us. We have to go and follow him because I think it's the only way out of here. And Wesker knows that the city is going to be destroyed at 6 a.m. So it uses again, it's not really a nuke per se, it's more of like a self-destruct. So it's actually it feels more like Resident Evil 3 because the whole city is going to be destroyed, but it is actually just a self-destruct. That we're counting down to, which is very Resident Evil. They always end with the self-destruct in X number of minutes, you know. And I don't know if it's you hear the voice, but I think you do see it in a computer screen or something, like self-destruct in towards the end of the film. You do see that phrase, which is nice. So cool.
Nice.
So they go down the tunnels, and we'll switch over to the other characters because everything kind of comes together once they're all in the tunnels going towards the lab. So yeah, Claire's stuff is that she eventually saves, because once she fires and sees zombies appearing at the gate, and we get the truck driver like flips the truck and explodes, kind of like the game. Leon is such a doofus that he doesn't even wake up for a flaming zombie that's walking towards him. And she fires and saves his ass, tells him to lock the gate, and then it's like, I'm just going to leave because I think this place is screwed. And he actually tries to. So we get a whole sequence of him leaving, driving to like leave the city, and there's like Hunk style like umbrella mercenaries.
I thought of Hunk when I saw him.
Yeah, blocking people, and to the point where when people try to fight their way through, they just start shooting everyone. So he tucks his tail between his legs and goes back to the police station. And this is where we get our big zombie dog sequence where he's like ducking and diving and trying to get away from it. He's got no bullets left, and it's Claire who actually saves him. Interestingly, even though the scenario is very different, Claire and Chief Irons do actually meet for the first time in the remake, the game remake, in the parking lot. That's the same location they meet, so that's kind of neat.
Now, so a few things, I want to go back and touch on briefly.
Sure.
So one, man, I'm just so sick of like the use of like pop songs in horror movies. Like, so yeah, like Leon listening to his Walkman, and I forget the song that was playing, but it was like this like 90s pop song as like the zombies walking towards him.
I will say I like the first one. The first one is Claire turns up the radio in the truck at the start, and it's like
Sure.
What was the song called? Something Games. Keep playing your dang games. I don't know the song. But anyway,
I mean, that's totally fine because it's like working in the environment. I don't like it when it's like, during a horror montage or like horror scene or something.
Oh sure, I mean? No, I like that first one because because it says 1998, and then we hear that song on the radio, and it's like, okay, you're giving me the 1998 mood.
Yeah. That's fine, yeah.
The problem with a lot of mid pieces, and like Fear Street on Netflix was atrocious for this, is that one wasn't enough. We had to do it every 5 minutes, and that was way worse than this is. This one has like half a dozen maybe.
I mean, I would think that the big instances where this when the flaming zombie is walking towards Leon, and the reason why I don't like it is because it instantly becomes like more comedic to me than it is.
Yeah.
Supposed to be horrific, and maybe they want a little bit of levity in it. That's fine, but I'm not crazy about it. I mean, other than that, I did think it was like a cool visual and stuff.
Yeah.
But then the other instance we got,
the visual was good. Yeah, that's what to say that. The other one was before or around or just after that. It was Chief Irons getting shot at. The song starts playing on the radio.
Yeah, he mentions it before. He was like talking about like Journey, like which is like just like a weird little like thing they throw in that it's like there's so many fan servicey things, but then there's also just like this really weird stuff they invent, like, all right, yeah, Chief Irons is just a big fan of Journey, and this one actually, I mean, I don't want to complain about it too much, but I mean, this one, it worked a little bit better for me, just because, okay, I guess they set up that he likes this band and he's listening to it in his car, like that's fine, whatever, but so I didn't think it was as bad, but it was still a little bit too much. But actually, this was another scene, though, that I thought was shot really cool where, yeah, like he's getting shot at and zombies are attacking, and then like he has to like, back up his car, and it's all like the camera's just kind of all, hanging on like that one.
It's the one shot inside the car, so we don't really we don't see anything clearly. We see like cracks, like the bullets are hitting the window, so we're seeing like the cracks in the window like happening. We're seeing but it's very steamy, it's night, there's a lot of bright lights, it's raining, so it's a very unclear. It's actually a really good way of like, well, we can't do a lot of this convincingly, so this is a good way of like hiding like how maybe shit a lot of this looks, but that's okay because it was effective atmosphere wise.
Yeah, and it's just really strange because there, it's moments like these where I'm like this is a really good director, like he can make some like really cool and interesting shots, but then there's just other instances where that's not the case, so it's kind of strange.
Yeah, but Claire saves his ass because she snuck in through the car park, and immediately it's like, okay, like who the hell are you? And Leon's like freaking out and pointing his gun at her, and she's like, I'm looking for my brother. Where's Chris Redfield? And he's like, you're Chrissy's little sister. I thought you weren't talking terms. And the joke here is basically that Leon's a doofus. He isn't confident enough to hold his gun or anything. Claire's like, where's your armory? We need more weapons. And like he can't like work the shotgun, so she takes it off of him and starts like this is how you do it. And you hear a noise, right? You hear a noise coming from the jail cells, and I went, oh shit, it's Ben. Yeah. Ben's going to, and we actually already see Ben. Ben is on the videotape earlier on. He's like, they kind of turned him from a reporter into a conspiracy nut who's like, oh, Umbrella Man, they're up to all this shit with the water supply. And they have like a throwaway line to explain why Leon and the STARS team aren't affected, because he assumes, the police were probably all given like something they didn't know about to protect them from it, because they want they want the authorities to still be able to function. So at least until the last minute anyway. So
now, do you want to back up a bit and talk about how Claire got here, or I don't know if you want to talk about her scenes at all?
Oh sure, yeah. So she has a little bit of a moment with the neighbors at Chrissy's place, which is an okay scene. I thought that was good. Yeah,
that's where you get the itchy tasty reference.
Yeah, the zombie, because I do kind of appreciate that the people who are turned into zombies slowly, like like they still speak for a bit, so they're not quite zombies yet, but they're kind of halfway there. Whoa,
and we didn't mention before.
We're halfway there. Whoa,
good job.
Living on a zombie. I don't know.
Very nice. But yeah, well, like we didn't mention before, the waitress at the diner, like her eye starts bleeding.
Yeah. That's the first like sign that the public are deteriorating.
But then I thought this neighbor stuff like was kind of interesting when she sees like they look very sickly. It's like a mom and her little ginger child.
Yeah, it was all right. Like she steals Chrissy's bike, which is a little bit funny because the one thing he says to her is like, don't take my bike, don't touch my bike, and she of course takes his bike. And I think that was like one of those lines that was like, you know what, that's pretty funny to people who know the games because we all think of her arriving on a bike, so we know she's going to take it, right?
Yeah.
And even if you've not played the games, you probably know she's going to because they wouldn't have that line if she wasn't going to take the bike. But I think it's funnier for people who've played the games because like, we're getting the bike. Oh, she's going to be on the bike. There is, and
then she kind of runs into Birkin on her way.
Yeah, because they're
the station.
They're running to the lab so he can grab his G virus samples, which again is something kind of from the game, so that's neat. But they have this moment where they sort of make eye contact, and he recognizes her, and she recognizes him. And I think it's around here we start getting like 2 or 3 flashbacks of like when they tried to like take her for experimentations, and she ultimately she just kind of like fights back and like runs away, and like it sounds like she eventually runs away properly like later as an adult or like as a teen, and like goes to a different city, and you know Chris has not seen her in a few years and whatever else. But yeah, that's basically it. But there's a lot of shots of her on her bike in the rain looking around and like the city.
That looks cool.
Yeah, all that stuff looks good. But yeah, so Ben's in the jail cell, and it's not Mr. X who kills him, unfortunately, or William, but it is. He does die in the cell though. He does get bit by he's got a cellmate who's turned into a zombie who grabs him.
Which I thought was another like really cool scene. Like I thought this was all very well done, intense, and like again he's playing like a lot with shadow, and when you just kind of see that zombie rising like in the dark background, I was just like, wow, this is like really cool. I like the way this looks. And again, we just get more of Leon just being totally incompetent.
Yeah, I mean Ben manages to take his gun, and he's like a conspiracy nut. It's not like he's some special forces dude who knows what he's doing. I mean, Ben is a little bit annoying, but
for sure.
it's not like Ben was that likable in the game anyway. But
right, yeah.
So he is different, but it's not like I cared about him enough that I care that his personality is like completely flipped. So it's whatever. So yeah, it's a decent enough little sequence. I mean, Leon looks like an idiot. Don't get me wrong, but I'm okay with that. Honestly, Leon is kind of it. Claire saves his ass.
I'm still laughing at all this stuff.
Claire saves his ass yet again. So yeah, basically their plan is like Chief Irons knows. This is the thing, they kind of imply that Chief Irons does know a little bit about what's going on, because he seems to be, he seems to know that they should get out of the city. He seems to be like a bit more like instantly afraid of the zombies than everyone else is. And then he knows that there might be a way out of the city through somewhere else, and he takes them to the orphanage, and it's like, so he knows about this tunnel. So I mean, they're at least implying that he is shady and knows about, Umbrella is using him for stuff, and he knows about certain things. So some of the story about him in the games is kind of hinted at without it being, explicit. But he gets mauled by a liquor. He gets the pulled up to the ceiling. He gets the big liquor death, which is fine enough.
The idea of it was cool, and I liked how you don't see the liquor at first, you just kind of see the lights moving. I like that. CGI not great.
It's one of those things where the CG is not good, but the design is good. Like it looks like a liquor from the games. Like it's like it's fine in that sense. Same
thing with the dog earlier too. Like once the dog is all zombified, like I was like, it doesn't look that great, but also at least it does look like the game. And again, as a B level cheesy movie, it's fine. Again, the design is actually perfect. It's just that the CG is not, great, and that's fine. And I like the tease because I think she sees Lisa, and Lisa goes shh, and immediately I went, oh, the liquor's here. Like that was like the hint, and I thought that maybe they'll use the whole thing where they can't see to their advantage. Maybe they'll try and sneak around the liquor. So I was really surprised when it didn't happen, and because I thought, maybe we'll get one scene where they're going to have to try and walk past the liquor or something. And sure, maybe right at the end of the scene it'll hear them and they'll do the big moment. But instead it just kind of charges at them. They empty their clips at it. Doesn't work, obviously. And
Lisa gets her like Hulk moment where she comes in and just rips the licker's face apart, and it's kind of like, oh, Lisa's kind of like a hero monster, which I'm actually, again, I'm kind of okay with that as a change, because Lisa story is so tragic. The idea of having a sympathetic monster in Resident Evil is kind of a cool idea, because like they're all evil. Because it's a video game, we have to kill everything. Like they're all just evil, right? Once they become monsters, it's kind of nice that she is still kind of likable. Because she was always a tragic character. Yeah, there was always sympathy for her, even though she was like malicious to you, like in the game.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I came to the remake a little later. Like I didn't really play it when it first came out. So I think I only played it for the first time like a few years ago. And I actually only played it with Jill, so I'm not like super familiar. Like
it's basically
with Lisa as a character.
Her stuff is basically the same in either character's game.
Okay. But yeah, like from what I remember of her though, like I remember like she's very dangerous in the game, but it did also feel like, yeah, like you feel very sorry for her. Like it's not her fault. And then I forget exactly what happens to her in the game. But because I think there's like a couple of different things that can happen.
No, the endings is always the same. It's so she's unkillable. So you always just have to run from her when you encounter her, because she won't take damage. Which is interesting if they played with that in this, like the idea that she can take on lickers because she just can't get hurt. That'd be kind of neat if they explored that a little bit more. But yeah, the ending to her in the game is that you push like the crypt that has her mother in it. You push that off of a platform, and she jumps down after it, and that's how you get rid of her.
And I was trying to think. Does she kill Barry, or does Barry like save you at one point?
Well, that's up to you. You get a choice, and depending on what you pick, either he'll die there, or he'll like help you, and then he'll have more story.
Okay, I think that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, yeah. So. Again, it's one of these things where it's meaningless. It's not. This is not good storytelling. This is not like an objectively good thing for a movie. But I smiled so much when like Lisa pulled out the keys, and it was the heart, the spade, the clubs, and the diamond keys from Resident Evil 2.
I think I actually missed that, but that sounds cool.
Oh yeah, I nerded out like seeing. I just smiled. It's one of those things where it is just fan service, and it just so happens that this is a particular franchise that the fan service, at least because I've never really been fan service with this before, is going to hit me. So I smiled. I did. So neat.
I think a lot of the things with the like this kind of stuff though is I feel like other movies, like you would have like. They would really emphasize it, like they would have a character like look at it and be like the heart key, huh? And then like there'd be like a music sting or something like that. Yeah, but like this, I think it's totally fine to have these kind of fan service moments.
It doesn't dwell on them, because like I said earlier on, like, even the ammo box for the shotguns, the ammo box from the game, it doesn't dwell on it. She just picks it up and starts. So yeah, and which is why there might be some small things in the background that I didn't notice. There might be other little Easter eggs that pop up. So they go down an elevator, and the elevator going down did really feel like, okay, we're entering that part where they're going down into the lab, right, or to the sewers and stuff before we get to the last part of the game, right? That's what it kind of felt like. So and actually even the sound of the elevator reminded me of the games, which actually reminds me, see when they're opening the front door to the mansion earlier on, obviously we're not going to get that POV shot of just the door opening, but they emphasized the doorknob like turning, and like the sound effect I think was really focused on, and I think it was intentional. Cool. It was like, this is what every time you open a door in Resident Evil, the classic games, this is what it sounds like. Like they really emphasized it, and I think that was intentional. So cool. Neat trick. So one of the most interesting things that happens, which again also made me nerd out, is one of the locations that Leon and Claire stumble upon before they get to the meeting point in the middle, is they find like sort of like an archive place, and there's records for Umbrella and stuff.
Oh right.
And there's some film reels. And I was like, and before she played it, I thought, this is neat, because obviously like reading the files and getting lore in the game is a big part of it, and it's really one of the things I love about it. It doesn't make much sense in a movie to be reading things constantly, because you can't really do that properly. Right. But like having some like a little video to watch is like kind of the film version of that, and it's like a visual way of doing it, so that's cool. And obviously I was thinking to myself, oh, and they've had like, you know, videos that you watch in the games like, as files from time to time. Like there's usually one example in each game, and there's even been a film reel or two throughout the games. And funnily enough, one of the examples of the film reel that you get in the games is in Code Veronica. So Claire starts playing this film reel, and I see these two twins, and I'm like, wait a minute, is this the Ashfords? And then the second shot is like the butterfly wings, and I'm like, holy shit, this is this is like from Resident Evil Code Veronica. And I was like, are they teasing Code Veronica here? And sure enough, there's like a file that they see on the
it says
Ashford, the Ashford twins, and I'm like, like, this is the sequel bait. Like,
oh, for sure.
And I'm thinking about it, I'm going, you know what, it makes sense, given that Claire's the focus more than anyone else. Like, Code Veronica is the game that continues her story. Like, it makes sense that would be the one that they would do, even though it's weird to me that like we're going to like not do like 3 and we're just going to go straight to Code Veronica. And it feels like if they do Code Veronica, like somehow Jill and Leon will be there too. It feels like that.
Like I wonder if that's a way to change it up a bit. And so because of like how this movie ends, you can't really do Resident Evil 3. But like, I wonder if you bring Jill along for Code Veronica, and then maybe you could have a nemesis in there. You know,
yes.
like if that's a possibility.
Yes, or you somehow have 4 in Code Veronica happening at the same time, and like, and Jill's with Leon and Claire's with Chris, and like I don't know, but I don't know. Maybe we're going too wild with that, but nah, this does feel like genuine setup.
For sure,
for stuff, and it was surprising because I never really thought that we're going to do Code Veronica stuff. So this being like a direct pull from that, like really made me go ooh. So,
and I wonder if maybe, I mean, I'm sure probably part of it is that, you know, maybe they really like Claire and wanted her to be the focus, so that would make sense to have that as the next movie. But I wonder if part of it is, you know, the previous franchise. I mean, I don't remember much about those old movies, but like again, they didn't adapt the games barely like at all, or
no, and
especially not well. But they definitely did incorporate like, you know, stuff from like 2 and 3 and like some of those movies, if I remember correctly. So I don't know, maybe if they wanted to distance themselves, like I feel like doing Code Veronica would be something that was like, you know, like very different from anything that's been like, you know, done before.
Yeah. So that's all neat. And so what was weird to me though is that it's actually Jill and Chris who end up with Sherry, which is really, I was like, wait, this is the Resident Evil 2 character though. Why is she not with Claire and Leon? But I guess it's a symptom of, because you've meshed these things together. Like it felt like Jill and Chris needed something, like they needed to be the ones to confront Wesker, and because Wesker was so they basically, what they do is that in the Resident Evil 2, when you get the flashback, it's actually Hunk and the SWAT team that come for the G virus, and Birkin like injects himself. So they have that in here, but in here it's actually Wesker, like his mission is to come and get the G virus from Birkin. And
that makes sense.
It kind of hints that he doesn't know who he's working for, and immediately I sort of felt like, well, this is kind of weird because in the games, when like the third party who's doing stuff that's mysterious, that's Wesker. Wesker's the one who's running that, like against Umbrella or against whoever's like what's in 4. Like in 4, it's Wesker who has hired Ada, right? So this immediately made me go, well, this is interesting that now Wesker's the hired like person that for this mysterious organization that's outside of Umbrella. So that was kind of intriguing, and obviously we'll get to some more of that in the mid-credit scenes. So okay, interesting. But yeah, we have this whole thing where Wesker's like, I have to take that virus from you. Birkin tries to shoot him. Wesker shoots Birkin. Birkin injects himself. Annette, who doesn't have as much to do, that's Birkin's wife, she just gets shot by Wesker. So Wesker has just Batman this girl, right? This girl has just watched her parents die. He doesn't look very hard for her, he just yells for her, and we see her like a minute later, she's like right around the corner. She's barely moved. Like she's hiding just off camera. But when the girl comes out and holds up the gun, Wesker, there's like a split second, is Wesker going to shoot a kid? And before he can, though, Jill shoots him instead, and that's kind of like the big thing. I'm like, okay, all right. what are we doing here? And Wesker has like a dying speech where he's like, I'm sorry, like I would never have shot the kid, I promise, I would never have shot the kid. Like, yeah. So you know, Chris goes over and comforts Sherry, and they're like, okay, we have to get out of the city, it's going to be destroyed at 6 a.m. Is like there's a train near here or something, and like so all the characters converge at the train, which is from the end of Resident Evil 2, is the train. And so okay, but obviously through all this, Birkin starts to mutate, so we get phase 1 Birkin, which is actually fairly faithful, I'd say, to the games, in that it's like a man but with a big like this mutated arm with the eye in it. And I do like that you get like one big eye as well as the little eyes, because that was like when I saw the full William Birkin in the trailer, I was like, why, that's just a lot of eyes. It's like, I know he has the eye, I know that's his distinct feature is the big eye, but it like you've kind of like ignored all the rest of it.
And I like when like Chris kind of has to fight him on his own. Like this felt like kind of like a Resident Evil boss fight where you're like looking for places to hide and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Again, it's a little bit weird that it's Chris fighting Birkin, but they set up that they have this past. It's kind of funny that they never interacted together aside from being like, child and adult in the past. Like the only time we found out about this is like through him talking about him to Claire with a photograph, and that was it. Like that was the entire setup for their like, oh, he's like a father to me, is William Birkin. Like, all right, sure. So it is a bit weird that it's Chris fighting the Resident Evil 2 boss, but it does feel fairly faithful. I mean, I wouldn't say the fight feels, because in the game it's like he's got a pipe, like William's got a big pipe and he's swinging. That doesn't happen, but it does feel faithful to how he looks, more or less, and like the tension of the scene is kind of there, so fair enough. And they think they've kind of defeated him to a point, but then of course it's like, and I appreciate that there is a second phase. I appreciate that he mutates more and he becomes a bigger, even though I hate how he looks once he mutates, because it doesn't look like the game.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's just a big generic looking eye monster thing. Especially since I was hoping for like the big crawling down, when he's like actually like takes up the whole train and he's just like
that's
sliding.
What I was expecting.
I was hoping for that and we didn't get it, which kind of sucks. But they're all on the train together. Our characters have all merged together, which is kind of interesting, having Chris, Claire, Leon, Jill all together, and Sherry. And
which feels kind of weird because like she feels like such a non-character. Like I forgot about her throughout most of the movie, and then it's like, oh yeah, she's here.
What, Sherry?
Yeah,
no, that's true. She's not a character in this. She doesn't get to be the newt like she does in Resident Evil 2 proper.
Yeah.
So, but like they're counting down. And this is kind of like, I was like, okay, I like the atmosphere of like it going back to the time like every like couple of minutes. But then I really appreciated like why they did it, because it's like, oh no, we actually have a countdown to an explosion now. Like this is like the end of a Resident Evil. There's like this place is going to self-destruct in X number of minutes, and because it tells us the time, it's like 5:56, and it's like, oh, there's 4 minutes, and that's when William shows up and all the chaos is happening and blah 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 blah. But of course, like Leon's had not much to do, so they give him the moment. They give him the moment where they're struggling to shoot this thing. They can't do anything to it. It's too powerful. And Leon walks in with a rocket launcher.
Yeah.
His one-liner's not that good. I don't even remember what he said, but it wasn't that good.
Well, I forget if his I think it was like after he fires it, but he just says something like, oh yeah, I found a bazooka in the other compartment or something like that.
It was more of a one-liner. It was like it was on special or something. He says something like cheesy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't quite like one of the lines from the games. Like I was hoping for something better, but whatever.
So is this like a little bit of like making up for like, hey, sorry, we've been making fun of you the whole movie. Here, you can have the big hero moment.
Yeah, I guess probably. It was like, because Claire gets the most story. I think Chris and Jill are equally like next tier, and then Leon feels like the fourth one. I think this was just the way to give him like, he gets the. And Chris got to fight the first phase of William, so he gets that. Jill gets to have a bit more personality and gets to like have the drama of like being betrayed. So, and that's not as exciting to us, but I get why is that from a script perspective. That's like, the character gets something to do. Like she has a moment.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So this is Leon's like, he gets to not be a failure. He gets to shoot the monster in the ass. But I'm surprised the monster wasn't turned round so it was his ass, just for the joke.
That would have been funny.
Yeah, just for the joke. But yeah, so we get like the city, like, you know, implodes. They're still in the tunnel, so it's like, oh, did they survive? Were they far enough out of the city in time? And we get like the Umbrella report like types up on the screen, like, you know, Raccoon City destroyed, Nest facility destroyed, you know, civilian survivors 0. And then the final shot of the movie, and then the final shot of the movie is our main characters walking out the tunnel like badasses, and then it comes up with the Resident Evil text again, which I get that works as a cliffhanger. It's like, no, they think there's no survivors, but there's 4 people who are going to come after you, Umbrella. There's 4 people who know the truth. But I kind of really wanted someone to say we have to take down Umbrella. Guitar kick, because at the end of Resident Evil 2, when you get to the end of scenario B, it's the true ending. Leon turns around and says, "We have to take down Umbrella." Down, 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 down. You know, credits roll. Like, I kind of wanted that moment. And given how much fan service was in this, given how many little references they threw in, I thought they might do it, and they didn't. So, but hey. I mean, I appreciate that it at least treats like the 4 main characters like they are the 4 important characters. Like, you know, they're not all obviously characterized the same, but...
Oh, you think it's better when they use these main characters from the game instead of just making up a completely new character that has to anchor the entire franchise?
Well, that was the thing. Not only did we not get characters from the game in the first movie, Alice, and it's basically it was to use a wrestling term, right? Is that all the characters from the games when they showed up in 2, 3, so on, they were basically just there to put over Alice because they had to be saved by Alice. So they were all just there to show how great Alice is. Oh, Alice is the hero. Alice is the badass. And I actually saw someone on the internet accusing Claire of just being the new Alice, and I'm like, well,
no.
Like, first of all, I disagree just because I don't think she actually comes in and saves the day for everyone in this at all. Like, she gets the most focus, but she doesn't, like everyone gets their share of, like, moments. Like, I don't think she's, like, there to be the Deus Ex Machina for other people. And secondly, she's actually from the goddamn game, you bastard. Like, so that's pretty important, okay?
Yeah.
And she's always been better than Leon, so suck it. So that's what it is. People are just butthurt because Leon's like the 4th one.
Yeah.
He's the least important, so... yeah. So there is a mid-credit scene where Wesker wakes up in a body bag. He's been brought back to life, which, to be fair, in the games, he also technically died and came back. So,
it's true.
Fair enough. And flipping the games, it's actually Ada who hired Wesker. So Ada shows up and says, "I made a Wong." Like that. I think that's what the problem was with everyone saying their names. Is it wasn't just that they said their names a lot; they said their full names a lot. Like, it wasn't just I'm Ada Wong. Like, it's okay. And like, sure.
Especially like the majority of people have seen this are probably like, you know, big fans of the game, so they know who these characters are, but like feels like they just really want that, like, just to hammer it home, like, all right, this is, you know, in case you want to go home and Wikipedia who this is, like, you know. But we get the origin of Wesker's infamous sunglasses.
yes, his eyes, like, everything's too bright and he can't see, so he needs to wear sunglasses. So he gets sunglasses, but he's still very personality wise different. But that's the thing though, if we're going to do Code Veronica, we have to have Chris versus Wesker.
Yeah,
like, Wesker has to be there for it, you know. Yeah. So I hope they don't go too much into, like, you know, you're in love with Jill and Jill had the hots for me. Like, they better not go into that if they get to make the sequel, because I mean, it's not doing that well, so they may not get to make it anymore, honestly.
Yeah, but I wonder, all right, it's not doing well, but also this movie I think was like pretty cheap to make. Like,
that's also true.
I wonder if it'll, like, you know, once it's like streaming on DVD and stuff, like, I wonder if it'll make enough that they're like, all right, you can do another cheap one or something.
Do you know what the sad part is this has a lower Rotten Tomatoes score than the original Resident Evil movie, and like I have to be honest, I think I kind of get it. Like, I think objectively, as a movie for someone who knows nothing about the games, that is probably a tighter movie. Like, it's not a good movie, I don't think, but
I guess, yeah.
But like, if you care about the games at all, like, this is less insulting.
Yeah.
It's not a good.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
It's definitely not a good movie. It's far too rushed. They squished 2 games together, 2 stories together, but it's not as insulting. Like at least like I watched this and I go, you know what, this is a pretty poor script, but it's a script. It's a bad script by someone who cares about the game.
Yeah,
and I'd rather that than whatever Paul W.S. Anderson gave us.
Yeah, like I don't know. I appreciate like stuff like this where it doesn't work, but it's at least interesting in like the ways it doesn't work. Versus like the first Resident Evil movie where there's just like no DNA of the game whatsoever, where it doesn't feel like anyone had even played the game or knew anything about it. Like at least here it's like it's an adaptation, so it's different, and it's kind of interesting to see the way they try to adapt it.
Yeah, it's so weird that we're at a point now where we've had a 6-movie franchise of Resident Evil, and then now it's rebooted, and we've got a second version of it, and this may get a sequel if it scrapes enough, because it was so cheap to make. I mean, I would hope maybe the argument's going to be, well, it came out right, it's just as movie theaters are just kind of coming back, and not everyone's going. Honestly, I could see it getting like a Netflix sequel. Like I could see it being, we'll do a second one, but it's straight to Netflix. Like I could totally see that happening.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I would be interested in it at the very least.
I'd watch it. Like, this is the thing. I had a pretty decent time because the fan service was directly for me. But that does not make a good movie. But it did. Like, I was smelling a lot. Like, I was sort of like the keys, or they mentioned the character, or like when Claire's like, I've got a video. There's this guy, Ben. Whatever his name is, I'm like, Ben, the reporter, I know who Ben is. Like, there was a lot of that in this, and like maybe it's just because the last 6 movies were so like spit in the face of anyone who gives a shit about the games. Like the fact that this was trying to like at least have the fabric of the games was just like nice to see. I mean, not a good movie, but if you're a fan of the games, I think you'll at least get some chuckles out of like all the fan service.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah,
it's interesting.
And then it truly is, because there is such a weird mix of different things going on in the movie. Like again, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work, but there is some genuine stuff that does work, and there's some cool horror elements, and then there's some just like really weird kind of like missing the mark stuff. So definitely not a good movie, but it was like an interesting experience watching this, and then really going back and forth between like, ooh, I'm enjoying this because it's a reference to the game, and ooh, I'm enjoying this because it's so bad, and ooh, I'm enjoying this because it's like like a weird like different take on the characters, and oh, I'm enjoying this because it's like a generally cool scene now. Like there's a lot of different reasons to enjoy the movie, but I don't know, it's weird.
Do you know what might have been, and I don't know how you would do this as a movie, maybe it just wouldn't work, but what would have been cool if they wanted to keep this idea that both things happen the same night? What if we got what if it was still 2 movies, but there was some overlap, and it was like kind of like at the A and B scenario from 2, where the first movie is Resident Evil 1, the second movie is the Resident Evil 2 stuff, but they still take place in the same night like this, where they kind of like come together at the end. So you'd probably have to do the same thing where what the game does, where there's like a final boss fight for the first movie, but the true ending, just so that there's something new at the end of the second movie, is at the end of the second movie, and you sort of do it that way. I mean, it's very experimental, and I feel like that would maybe have to be like more of like a streaming service thing, just so you could be like, you get the first one now, you get the second one in 6 months or a year or whatever it is.
Yeah,
it'd be hard to like ask people to go back and like get the second, go and pay to see the second one after the first one, but maybe you just see like the hints of Claire and Leon early on in the movie, and then at the end, and then it's like, no, you want their story, and then the true ending, you get that in the second one. But I feel like that's appealing to us, I think, because we love how Resident Evil 2 works, the game. I feel like maybe general moviegoing audiences would see that as some sort of weird like con.
True.
So I don't know.
I mean, hey, if that means maybe we could get like one movie with a tyrant, I'd be pretty happy. I know. Birkin's cool, but man, I love the tyrant.
Yeah, I want a classic, and Resident Evil Code Veronica does have a tyrant, although if they are going to somehow shoehorn Nemesis into it so that we can have Nemesis in this series, then I feel like you're not going to do the Tyrant as well. I feel like it'll be just Nemesis, but I don't know. Ah well. I guess it's fairly time to rate this bad boy. And, we knew this was going to be a longer one. It's not as long as Halloween Kills, but I'm happy to tell you, Tim, this is the second longest episode we've ever done.
I think, that fits. That's very funny, especially having, them be, two more recent episodes. But, each one, I think, is, oh, yeah, that makes sense that we would go that long in Halloween Kills. And, it would make sense we go along on this one.
I mean, it is notable because I have been porting over the old episodes to the movie channel because, obviously, we switched to a different channel. And a lot of the old episodes are 30 or 40 minutes, and our average has went up. I feel like now we comfortably hit close to an hour on most movies, and I think it's probably for the better, and people seem to like it. We've had a couple of comments saying they're happy the episodes are...
Maybe they like it. I got stuff to do.
A bit meatier. But yeah, there are these special cases where this and Halloween Kills where it's going to be long, so...
Yeah.
Look at the bright side, Tim. The average length of an Ace episode is 90 minutes, so Streams is actually shorter on average. So,
okay.
If that's a comfort to you, I don't know if it is.
A little bit.
A little bit, okay.
That just means I'm never gonna ask to guest on Ace. Sorry.
You wouldn't know how to talk about science fiction anyway, Tim. It's out of your wheelhouse.
Hey, how dare you? I just these last 2 weeks I've watched all the Matrix movies. I've been mainlining Twilight Zone like nothing. How dare you?
Talk about long reviews. I think all 3 of our Matrix reviews on Ace were all 2 hours each because so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Dissecting those sequels,
especially the sequels, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to dig into.
Yeah. First movie I think is what's so strange about the first movie is that I think it's fairly straightforward, but for some reason when it came out, everyone was like, what is it? We don't get it. You watch it now, it's oh yeah, why was anyone confused? It's pretty straightforward. To
be fair, that was part of the marketing though, is the tagline was what is the Matrix? The website was what is the Matrix? They were playing up what is the thing? What is this thing? Yeah. So maybe that, added to it, I guess, but hey. All right, Timmy.
I wonder if we would have gotten that Resident Evil movie without the Matrix, because it definitely feels a little Matrixy, just in terms of how the action was. And
there was definitely, it was definitely a very generic movie of its time. You could feel the influence of Matrix and maybe a couple other things in it for sure. But yeah, time to rate. I think so. Timmy, what are you rating this weird concoction that is Resident Evil? Welcome to Raccoon City.
Yeah, I mean it is kind of a weird one to rate, again, just because I don't want to repeat myself too much, but it is such a mixed bag, and there was genuine stuff that I liked, and there are bits and moments where I'm this is good filmmaking. I like this shot. I like these characters. There's some cool horror stuff, but then there's also plenty of stuff that's not that cool, and there's some obvious stuff some bad CGI that you can point to, but really the thing that hurts this movie is just trying to cram so much, which is kind of odd because I think in terms of the structure of the film, it hurts it in a lot of ways. You don't get as much characterization as you want. It's kind of has a weird frantic pace to it.
Do you know what the sad part is we're getting this weird TV show, and I actually think this all 1 and 2 happening simultaneously like this could actually work as a 10 episode show. See if this was actually see if this was more 24, where it was not exactly real time, but it's the one night and it's split into 8 or 10 parts. You'd have time to do all of 1 and 2 in this fashion, because I actually don't hate it. I think the mood of all this happening together on one big night is actually kind of cool, but
it's not bad. It's just having to fit it in an hour and 40 minutes.
That's the problem, is that there's so much stuff from 1 and 2 and there's so much stuff that you could, even ignoring what's not in the movie from the games, there's just stuff that's in the movie that should be more fleshed out and slower paced. So So the weird thing is that it,
as a film, I think that really hurts it, but as fans of the game, it's like I don't mind it as much because I'm just constantly being bombarded by like references and characters and instances that I recognize and that is cool. And yeah, it's probably hypocritical because there's many of other examples. If they did this with other movies, where I'd probably just be really flippant and annoyed by it, but again, in this, it led to more joy than frustration. So with all that being said, I think I'm going to give it a 6. I think it was more entertaining than I thought. I can't call it a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, but as a fan of the game, I can't deny that I pretty much had a big smile on my face like throughout all the movie. Like sometimes it was for different reasons that I was smiling, but overall I had a good time. I can't deny that.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Because I think like I really struggle to like comprehend why I'm like kind of just having fun with the fan service in this when I hate it in like most other things and like say it's a crutch. And maybe it's a combination of the fact that one, I just care enough about Resident Evil that the fan service is more appealing to me in this way. Two, maybe it's because like the previous movies were so disrespectful that this having some fan service is just kind of nice. Yeah. And I think part of it though might just be that I don't expect like a great thing from Resident Evil movie, like, well,
especially from the trailers.
Yeah, like, but so the games are excellent games, but they're not excellent games because of the storytelling necessarily. I mean, I think it's good ways that the experience of going through the story is really great, but they're not necessarily like cinematic, wonderful. It's not like The Last of Us, where Last of Us has emotional moments and the characters are so well rounded and have arcs, and it's not like that. It's just more B movie stuff, and that's okay. And I think that this movie, like, I don't, because I'm not expecting as much from it. The fact that I was going to, best case scenario, it's going to be fun schlock. So the schlocky movie being nothing but fan service is easier to swallow and is not as infuriating as if I went in to see, like, if I go see the Batman, right, Matt Reeves' the Batman, and it's just a lot of references to stuff from the comics without a good story, like that will just annoy me, and I'll be like, no, this is not a good movie. Like, even though I love Batman and I get a lot of the references, I'd still be pissed at it. But with this, I'm like, it was only ever aiming really for a 7 at best. Like, really. Like, anything more than that would have been a miracle.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, like, when you're talking about, like, how, like, especially the original games aren't really remembered as being these cinematic masterpieces. And you think about the stuff that people always reference, like, it's not like people go, oh, man, when he says you are almost a Jill sandwich, like, that line really just hits me in the heart, like. Yeah,
imagine if they somehow tried to turn, like, because I mean, I give Ghostbusters Afterlife a lot of grief, and there's some really emotional stuff it gets to, like, and I'm just trying to think of like the movie version of Resident Evil that one day is going to try and make people cry when they bring up a Jill sandwich. Like, it's going to be like this emotional thing. They're like crying over the Jill sandwich because Jill died tragically or something. I don't know. Like, oh, like with Jill
Wesker's
sandwich.
Like Wesker's dying breath, he like pulls a sandwich out of his like jacket or something. It's like, here, Jill.
Or a lockpick, it's like it's a lockpick, Jill. You, the master of unlocking, take it with you, croak. But all that said, like, I did have like an undeniably fun time as a fan of the games, but it's not a good movie. So I think that I have to be very objective and strict with myself and just give it a 5, which to some might even be generous, and maybe it is still a little bit generous, but
probably.
Like, I can't deny that I was smelling a lot and like kind of enjoying the fluffiness of it. So I will be very curious to see how it holds up on a repeat viewing, because I don't imagine the special like, oh, here's this thing, here's that thing is going to like carry it as much. So we'll see. And somehow I made it all this time without making a Damien Dark joke, because the actor who plays Birkin was Damien Dark on Arrow. So just
he's an Amell. Is that what they're called?
Stephen Amell plays Oliver Queen on Arrow, if that's what you mean.
Well, isn't like the actor his brother or something?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Okay, so Chris on this is is Robbie Amell, yes, who
Okay.
I used to think they were brothers, and then I think someone corrected me and said they were actually cousins, and I'm not even sure which one is true, but
Oh.
they look, I mean, they're similar enough, to be honest. I believe they're related some way.
Okay.
So, but yes. All right, there you go. Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. We hit 2 hours on it, so you got your goddamn money's worth. There's 2 Christmas episodes coming before the end of the year, so look forward to those. That is your Christmas treats coming.
The only thing is, like, are enough people gonna? I mean, like enough of our fans, our community, have seen this movie that they'll want to listen to the review.
Some will do it anyway because they don't care about it.
Freaks.
So Tim's going to post for the thumbnails, so let's do that. Here we go. Oh, a Resident Evil pose here. Make sure the top of your head's not cut off, so just lean back a little bit.
See here.
All right, 3, 2, 1, pose. Okay.
What were you trying to do? The zombie.
Oh, okay. All right. I feel you'd have to turn around and sort of look over your shoulder to really achieve that, but maybe I'll do that if I'm feeling like it. I probably won't.
Photoshop some blood on my mouth.
So, I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers. Although, of course, you can support us by liking, subscribing, dinging the bell for notifications, all that stuff. YouTubers tell you to do it because it does help a lot. But you can support us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. Sometimes you get like little bonus segments that were edited out. Sometimes, and when we're back to the full schedule, we'll have bonus episodes monthly again. But that'll be coming sometime early next year. So look forward to that.
Thank God that this was a period piece, because if they did like a modern one, they would have to have like one of the characters be like a YouTuber or like live streaming.
Ben would be a YouTuber.
That would make sense.
Yes, he'd be doing TikToks about the conspiracy. You're right. But
like,
thank you.
I'm getting eaten, fam. Hit that subscribe button.
Thank you to our Patreon producers of Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Bordnow, Christopher Moy, and David Brown. So thank you to you guys. And Merry Christmas to all, because it is the month of December. So a couple of Christmas episodes coming your way soon. Catch us on the Twitters at Screams Midnight for updates and wacky comments from Tim and whatever else happens. But look forward to the Christmas episodes. But otherwise, hopefully you enjoyed our in-depth discussion of Resident Evil. Welcome to Raccoon City. We'll see you next time. Keep watching scary movies. And I hope this is not Chrissy's blood.